Thanks for being here. The last session, by the way, thanks to Sarah and Bobby and our creators and influencers for joining. That was cool. I learned a lot. As you probably know, I'm not a creator. I'm on the brand. I'm a long time brand side. I'm a long time marketer, and I learned a bunch of things. It's cool to hear the creator perspective. As a brand, they want me to pay on time, make sure that creators can be themselves, be authentic. They know their audience. I got to respond to my DMs if someone wants to DM me to partner up, and also, even if we create a great relationship, make sure they have my number so they can text me. So I learned a lot. Now we're gonna kind of handle the other side of things, talking with brands about what they're hoping for from creator campaigns, influencer campaigns, and influencer marketing. So thanks everyone for being here. My name's John Busby. I'm the CMO of Centerfield. I'll pass to Danielle to intro herself, and then we'll intro our panel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Silva. I run our corporate marketing at Centerfield, and I have a long history with influencer marketing for e-commerce and entertainment. But I'm really excited to be moderating this amazing panel.
Okay, cool. So as you know, if you've been with us throughout, every speaker who is joining us, we're making a donation to the charity of their choice. So as we go around, I'll ask folks to introduce themselves and then also talk about the charity that they chose. I will start with Scott, since he teased we've known each other for a long time. Scott, what are you doing now? What charity did you choose? And what are some of the brands that you have worked with and represented over the last few years?
Thanks, John. Nice to meet everyone out there. So currently I'm with a new startup. We haven't gone live yet, called Now With. And I think the best way to describe it is as a two-sided marketplace where we are creating a marketplace for creators, which hasn't existed before, looking at it through the lens on how do we make it easy for creators to talk about the products and content that they love and share that with the audiences and connect with consumers. On the other side of the equation, we're connecting brands to creators within that marketplace. And the reason I selected making the move over here is because at the center of it all, we still have consumers. I've had the opportunity over the last 10 years or so to lead e-commerce, digital marketing, and operations for brands ranging from Kiehl's to Diesel, John Barbados, Intermix, which is owned by Gap, and then most recently working for a couple brands owned by Andrew Rosen, Theory, and Alice and Olivia. The charity I selected is one that I've been fond of for quite some time. I did an initial fundraise where I ran my first New York City marathon, and that's Doctors Without Borders. I think they've been doing amazing work and very, very grassroots organized. So that's where I selected to have my donation go to.
Thanks, Scott. All right, I'll pass the baton to Hollie.
Hi all, lovely to be here. I'm Hollie Macdonald. I'm currently based in the UK and I am the Global Senior Digital Marketing Exec at FitFlop. So I have been with FitFlop for a few years now, working across digital marketing and affiliates and influencer marketing as well as a bit of a specialist. The brand we have, actually the charity we have chosen to select our donation to today is Prince's Trust. The reason we've chosen Prince's Trust is about empowering young people to optimize their dreams and really enable them to go bigger and better, and how they want to enable their lives to strive to be the best they can. In the UK, we really think that's so important as well. We're all about going above and beyond to achieve your dreams here at FitFlop, and literally nothing can stop you. So that's why we've chosen Prince's Trust.
Thanks, Hollie. Love that. Okay, Stephanie, round us out.
That's gonna be so hard to follow. So my name is Stephanie. Hi, nice to meet everybody. I am a former VP and exec for pretty big influencer marketing company. I've been on the agency side since I was 21 and fresh out of college. So I've worked for a variety of different PR agencies, social media agencies, and influencer agencies. I'm currently doing a bit of freelancing, but I'm also then have flipped my brand experience onto the talent side. And I work with both brands and talent at the same time, trying to teach talent what is going through brands' minds. We're not very transparent about what it is that we do and why. And my goal is to really use my information, my intelligence on the brand side to help create better win-win partnerships between talent and brands. So my donation is actually going to the American Cancer Society because that is something that has recently affected me personally. My dad just recovered from cancer, so he is cancer-free as of last month, hopefully, crossing our fingers, still waiting on news, but he has just finished everything. So it just made sense to really be able to tie to something personal for me.
That's amazing, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing, all of you, for your charities. So we thought we'd kick this off by talking about the role influencer marketing plays for a brand. We'd love each of you to speak to maybe a campaign you've run over the past year, even more recently, maybe the goals and the ultimate outcome. So let's start with Hollie.
So it's kind of hard to pick a campaign that's really successful. I think here at FitFlop, we always have an always-on approach in terms of whether it's working with influencers on a weekly basis through gifting and also activating true campaigns through key moments for the brand. Here, I think there's one that really stands out to me that is set in my mind. We had a product launch a while back. We were relaunching, well, not relaunching, we were launching the use of the Wonder Welly, which is our latest rain boot across the UK and the US. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it or tried it. It's basically the super light welly that is super comfortable. You can wear it. It's not going to give you aches and pains. And we wanted to run an influencer-led launch campaign. So we tried to do it in the UK and it had phenomenal success. And we started out with working across 3 markets. So we started out in the UK working with the launch of the product. And month over month, we actually saw an increase in traffic to site by 1,100%, which was phenomenal. It surpassed all of our expectations in terms of traffic goals and KPIs that we'd initially set to the product and to the campaign. And then past that point, we really saw that influencer marketing and the response that we were having from the community and also through social engagement was really uplifting to see how people were engaging with the product on a personal level, getting involved, sharing comments of what they liked about it, what they liked about through the influence and the talent makers was really inspiring for us. So as a brand, we then started to think of how we wanted to expand this and use influencer and talent creation across wider channels. So from the campaign, we started to roll out the use of content across paid social channels. And it was kind of leading up towards Black Friday, which, as we know, is a very promotional time. And typically a lot of ads are used towards traditional copy and everything. But instead, we took another approach. Instead of utilizing ad copies, we were wanting to utilize influencer marketing because we were seeing such an engagement. We saw 67% uplift in paid social ads through the use of influencer marketing, really engaging content and people really responding to seeing real women in the shoes in real life situations. And as a brand, I think that's so important for us because if anyone's tried our shoes, you've got to really try them to kind of get the feel of the comfort and the technology behind it. And sometimes you can't just put that in like a paid social ad or just an article. You really have to kind of give the true, honest opinion. And that's what we love about working with influencers and talent makers, I think. I think from there, we've really expanded in our use of influencers and having an always-on approach with the talent makers as well to expand as a global company.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting that you were able to, see success on the influencer marketing side and then amplify that with your paid. I think that's an interesting note, learning from that. Awesome. Scott, do you want to share maybe a campaign that you've launched and some of the goals and outcomes there?
Yeah, I'll share more high level if that's okay around just because I think you originally asked from a brand perspective why we choose to use influencer and the role it fits in. So from an influencer marketing perspective, one of the shifts, and speaking from a lot of fashion brands that ran e-com and digital for, we started to see a lot of our store associates, number one, had their own accounts and were influencers in their own right. And it kind of woke us up a little bit. We were already looking at influencer marketing. It's been part of our brand strategy to drive both top of funnel and a little bit that mid-lower funnel through some of the platforms that are out there that I'll touch on in a moment. But really believing that the modern sales associate is now today's influencers. And that's where we found a lot of our customers, especially the primary and contemporary fashion brands, were going to these influencers for the same type of advice you would typically go to for your store associate. And that kind of caused us to pivot and try to cast a wide net, which is a little bit of a catch-22. Because historically on the brand side, we would say, oh, we want these 1, 2, or 3 top tier influencers to work with. But it became very challenging to measure ROI. It was very, very much a brand and awareness play, which still has its own right. But to drive that conversion the way we thought influencers and kind of that paradigm of sales associates were going to, we started working with some of the platforms that were out there. So looking at reward style, shop style, were kind of the 2 influencer platforms. That allowed us to have a little bit more efficiency in how we can reach out to cast a wider net with influencers, but also have some accountability and measurability around that side of it. Now, I will say the one challenge is you don't have as much control. And from a brand perspective, I think influencers are a bit tricky to manage internally, in that it takes a lot of time, even if you're using these networks and platforms. So I think, that's where, talking to Stephanie over the last week or 2, when we were having conversations leading up to this, that's where, agencies and other platforms provide value, because it takes that heavy lift off of where we were saying. But overall, our goal historically, from a ROAS perspective, which we only look at now for retention marketing, we were pushing our affiliate channels to at least drive about a 6-to-1, because we've seen decent traction on that. For new customer acquisition, which is one of the things I love, not promoting any platforms, but I think Rakuten is great because you get both that awareness side with shop style and then some of that mid-funnel with Ebates. We're allowed to target for customer acquisition and really modified what we're willing to pay for a new customer in those channels. So we're able to now not only leverage influencer networks, but balance cost of acquisition where it makes sense for acquiring customer, and then ROAS or retention on that side of it, whereas before you couldn't break out new customer acquisition and retention.
Yeah, those are great insights, Scott. Thank you for sharing. Stephanie, you want to round us out with this question?
Sure. And I'm just going to share hopefully a brief story about how I almost quit influencer marketing, because I think it gives really good context to what I'm about to say. But there's also, and I'm sure a lot of you know it, there's a lot of negative press out there about influencers. There's a lot of negative feedback from consumers because an influencer will hold up a product and say, go buy this. And there's not always a lot of creativity behind what it is that they're doing. The brands that are pulling the strings behind the scenes are being really controlling over what it is they want influencers to do. And it's constantly like us having to reinvent ourselves. So a few years ago, I had a moment where I wanted to quit because I was like, I am just getting sick and tired of feeding this beast that is producing this kind of negativity. And since I had a little bit of power in the position that I was in, I said, okay, let's do this. Let's pivot our strategy. Let's get away from this whole, like what I call the hashtag ad. And let's go into this experience-driven influencer marketing style where we're creating experiences rather than creating ads. So one of the favorite campaigns that I worked on, and it's also like a guiding light for me going forward, because it's about what I call duplicatable experience. And it was for Paw Patrol that I worked on. It was a Nickelodeon brand. And basically they had this challenge where they just literally, it was an easy challenge. They had to promote products that were at Walmart. And rather than to hire people to just promote the product and say, hey, this is at Walmart, we developed this whole challenge where there was like a challenge that came from the pups and they had to save the day by doing a community service act because it tied into themes of the actual show. So I like dug myself this deep hole into Paw Patrol world, even though I don't have kids. And I like learned all about what that show was about and figured out how do I bring the Paw Patrol experience to the influencers, and then how did they bring it to their consumers, and how do we re-involve the audiences and what it is that we're doing from an influencer marketing standpoint. So Nickelodeon came back to us and was like, this is like one of the best campaigns we've ever run. They saw and like Walmart for the first time, like outranked Target and Paw Patrol merchandise, which was huge. And I don't usually get statistics like that back because on the agency side, we don't always get the success back from the brand to say, oh, this is how many sales we did because we're external to the brand. So for Nickelodeon to come back and actually tell us all of that, they gave us their business going forward. And it was just a very huge win for me and a very like honest to guiding light, like proof point that when you re-involve audiences in what you're doing, they get 10 times more engaged and they actually do what you want them to do. And the audiences were left out from influencer marketing for a long time. So there's a lot of ways we're looking at re-involving them and just keeping influencer marketing human, keeping it the way that it's supposed to be and not letting it become a commercial entity like New York City Times Square. So that's kind of what I am mission based on moving forward and kind of what I bring to a lot of the brands I'm working with now.
Stephanie, that's awesome. And it's cool to see everybody's answers to these questions are a little bit different. It shows there's so many shapes and sizes to working with influencers and creators. And my kids went through a Paw Patrol phase and like a major one. And so now I've got the theme song running in my head. So thanks a lot for that. But what's cool comparing these answers to the ones that I heard in the previous session were authenticity is super important to brands and creators. And then also this need for like efficient communication. I was going to ask the next question, and I was going to solicit the audience to ask questions that are on their minds. And it's cool because these converged. There's an open question, which is really similar to what I wanted to ask. And that is like how is success measured? Can you do a return on ad spend for influencer marketing? Like what bucket do you put it in? Like how do you all do that? I'm a CMO. I answer to our finance department. I answer to our CEOs. How do you articulate that? Stephanie, we'll go in reverse order this time. Stephanie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I feel like Scott's gonna have better answers to this because on the agency side, we always aren't required to get that nitty gritty in terms of return on ad spend. But what I will say is that I don't favor looking exclusively at that because influencer marketing, there's a lot of different values influencer marketing can bring to the table. And if you're looking exclusively at the metrics of it and exclusively at the quantitative data, you're missing the qualitative side. And the qualitative side is that things like that personification that person or that face brings to your brand, the humanization aspect. There's a lot of like immeasurable pieces that don't exactly like get into that return on ad spend that need to be pointed out in your organization somehow. You need to be able to go to your boss or go to your bigger team and say, hey, this person is really important because they're putting a face to our brand. Whereas like when you put a model to your brand, you're not putting that same kind of storytelling, you're not putting that same kind of face to your brand. So there's different qualitative pieces that are just as important as ROS. And so when I look at like, what did this campaign deliver to us, not only from a metrics perspective and a return on ad spend, I actually look at the full funnel and those 9 values. I wish I could like rattle them off the top of my head, but I have them written down somewhere on my website where there's like 9 different ways you can measure influencer marketing and it's not all data driven. So I will be the one to say that qualitative piece and then let Scott do the intricacies of that like really hard ad spend.
Yeah, that's a great segue to Scott, because I know you're focused on solving that problem right now. But if I could ask, like, how do you beyond the hard numbers, how do you explain the unquantifiable, or can you?
I think like Stephanie was saying, in some respects you can't, although we would go into like brand lift studies, or there's certain ways that, having that brand voice out there, you could at least push in that direction. The one thing I will say, this is where I think there's a lot of challenges with retailers and brands, because we are always under pressure. Every role I've had, I've been accountable for driving profitable revenue and owning digital marketing budgets. So I could not have the spin that you used to be able to have historically on the brand side, where it's like, oh, let's go spend 50,000, 100,000 on this campaign, but we don't really have to measure it because it's quote unquote brand marketing. So my world, I come at it through a little bit more bias, because anything I had to get done, I had to drive margin accretive business. So the way we look at it, and I think John, 2 sides to that equation. from a brand perspective, a little bit of what I was talking about before is for all of our digital marketing, regardless of channel, we started to break it down for cost of acquisition, because the things we need to have a healthy business are inflow of new customers, where we can retain customers or increase spend frequencies from those customers. So that's how we would layer in all of our marketing tactics. If you focus on the front end, cost of acquisition is really where we go to market. A lot of people would always ask, well, what if I don't know? You kind of have to test into it. We would set a benchmark, let's say $125 when I was at Intermix, and see, is that even achievable in paid social or shopping or search? And you start to adjust. The other piece we look at, you can't just stop with cost of acquisition, is that driving a healthy customer in terms of lifetime value? So can we predict lifetime value based on behaviors? And then payback period. If we check all three of those boxes, we'll continue to spend to acquire customers in those channels. And that bleeds into what I was talking about previously on social. Retention was a little bit different, where we would still focus on kind of that ROAS model of driving at least a 4-to-1. Most brands, to be profitable, have to drive 4-to-1, because your margin or flow through is around 25 to 30%. So it's not good enough. Even at 2-to-1, I would say they're not making a healthy margin on that. On the creator side, this is where I think it gets interesting, because so many channels are out there. I think creators are really looking to have kind of ownership of their own data, really understand, okay, what channels or platforms are working for them? How can I use that data to become closer to my fans or audiences? If I am genuinely talking about a product, is that resonating? So I think those are some of the metrics you'll start to see surfacing that creators are looking for. I think the last piece on the creator economy, if you will, is I think a lot of creators or influencers have really driven some of these beauty brands to astronomical purchase prices, but they're not really benefiting to that because they may have sold to XYZ beauty brands, said, oh, I'll be your influencer for $100,000. Well, at the same time, that beauty brand just got sold for 500 million, and it was solely because the influencer drove that awareness and value. So I think you're also will start to see this economy more rev share and type of models on the creator side. So that's where I see kind of the split if I'm looking at it from a creator analytics ROI standpoint, and then the brand side.
Hollie, you've done a ton of innovative campaigns. And so how do you measure success internally?
Yeah, I think Stephanie and Scott both have very valid points from both sides. And I think from being on a brand perspective, my job is to balance up between both being both present with the influencer and also working with the agencies to support the campaign. So I can see both sides. And I think there's so many aspects that when I look at building a campaign, how I look to measure it, it's not just from one stance, but it's a holistic view from my perspective, and how we engage with the influencer, but also in a wider perspective, how the brand is also represented. We use a lot of influencers as extension of our brand, so they are ambassadors. So we want them to feel that they are being truly authentic to the products and to the campaign. So from that sense, I think that aspect is irreplaceable to any campaign. You have to be authentic and enjoy working with influencers to get also the best content as well, to kind of feel that it's not staged or stagnant or anything. When we look at images, we're always looking about kind of if there's enjoyment and there's like perceived happiness in terms of that side. That's one thing that we like to see. If there's like true enjoyment in being a part of the campaign. I think that's also, obviously it's not a measurable factor, but I think when we also look at the hard KPIs, I think Scott makes a very good point in terms of how we measure and how we also utilize agencies. Now, we utilize Rakuten, we utilize reward style shopping links. We've got a lot of sources that also optimize us with data. Now, we use that data to kind of look at all of like the click-through path from start to finish, from first touch point to last customer touch point, which we find really interesting, and understanding the engagement levels as well. So whether there's likes on photos, comments, the interactivity on a post as well. And it's hard to kind of say I think from an agency's perspective, obviously, when a brand is coming to you and saying, we want to run an influencer campaign, obviously I've been on two sides. I think when you obviously want to run a campaign that's profitable, but ultimately you are there working with people who are creating talent for your business. And it's also about engaging content that's going to be perceived well. So here at FitFlop, we actually are quite unique. I think we actually have a different view on ROI versus influencers to any other media channel within the business. So we look at it from a different angle in terms of utilizing traffic to site and engagement more than, say, a last click ROI perspective. Ultimately, it's really important to have that in the funnel. But I think for us as a brand, it's not our last hard click measure for us. It's something that we've tried before, and I think we've seen other results that are more compelling, that we've told a more positive story to the business, and that's how we've developed the strategy moving forward.
So it's very apparent influencers and brands define success quite differently, even from our last session. So what I'd love to hear from you all about is how you sort of work with influencers to get beyond the awareness play and drive, actual conversions. Maybe we start with Stephanie.
Yeah, so something that I've been focused on a lot, because I work on both sides, right, is when I look across every single campaign I've ever done and what's really worked for us, what hasn't, and what the outcomes were, like, was it a sale? Was it just a click? What was it? It was very clear that there were patterns of different psychological ways that content was developed that got us to that bottom funnel goal. So what I really work on when it comes to helping talent understand how it is to better reach a goal of a brand, it's really got to do with what's your content strategy. If it's an awareness play, it's as easy as saying, look at this product, look at what this product is, and just introducing the product. But then there's also the lower funnel plays you can go for with intention and consideration, where you want to get deeper into what that product actually does. What's the outcome? How does it fit into your life? How do you build the context? So as both a strategist, but then also someone coaching talent, it's really just about, well, what does the outcome need to be? What does the brand expect you to actually deliver? What does that brand need for you? And then how do I set up the right kind of campaign, whether it be this many stories, this kind of feed photo, the media balance, everything. There's so many thoughts that go into then what content actually gets us there, and how do I need to set that content? And it's been a very touchy conversation because, from hearing the last bit and end of that conversation that I got in the last module, it's like, creative control is a really big challenge because brands don't want to give it and influencers want all of it. So it's very difficult to balance who should get that creative control. But when you start to look at what actually works, you need that balance of the creative spin that the influencers provide, their personality, their own storytelling, that piece of it, but also the strategy behind it. Knowing that you're going to come in and there's a reason why we're asking you to tell us about what's happening around your life. When you actually introduce this product, because we know if you just say this is the product, then it's lacking the right kind of context that's going to drive a sale and drive people down the funnel. So we're really looking at getting really smart about our content strategies and how we utilize different kinds of content to be in different places in the funnel to help us better reach the outcomes we want to with talent.
Yeah, that's great. Scott, what has your experience been?
Yeah, I would say similar. I'll try not to repeat a lot of what Stephanie said because I'm in 100% agreement. One of the biggest challenges from brand side, I think that we look for to unlock with influencers, and why I still go back to them being kind of modern sales associates, is brands have always struggled, at least when you get outside of kind of CPG world, on kind of blending content and commerce. So I think that's the one area that platforms have unlocked, is being able to do content and commerce, especially through video. So that kind of takes it one step further. So we're looking for influencers that, one, are genuine and authentic. And I think leveraging kind of their craft, what they're very good, their point of view, kind of as tastemakers, to really push into those channels and be as authentic as possible, but also invite potentially their audiences and our audiences into the conversation. I think that's where it really, really works well. If you think of like watching, cooking, or as I alluded to earlier, a big runner. For me, like that's the type of influencer that gets me engaged. It's like seeing them in their craft, what they're really good at. It's like, oh, I want to buy that pair of shoes. Or, oh, if Rachel Ray is cooking with that pan, I've got to go buy that. So I think that's where we're trying to leverage and kind of unlock that side of the conversation. Way easier said than done, because as Stephanie alluded to, you still have that healthy, well, maybe not healthy, but that tension on the brand side where they want creative control, or what we would always hear if we suggest a influencer, it's like, oh, they're not on brand for us. But you really have to take that hard look and say, like, how is their audience engaging? What are the overall goals? But it does fundamentally go back to the content and commerce, kind of getting those to work almost holistically. And then influencers that are genuine and invite their audience into that conversation.
Yeah. And Hollie, what have been your tips for driving revenue with influencer partnerships?
I think a lot of this goes hand in hand and marries together in terms of working with e-commerce and influencers together to build the right path, really. Not one size fits all for every campaign, I would say. And sometimes you have to tweak and learn, which is part of the fun of it, and also understanding where your audience is and also what works with each influencer as well. I think guys have touched on a really good point. Obviously, this is kind of a wider play of obviously brand control and everything like that. But from a brand's perspective, we just also look to kind of work with loyal influencers who we're going to have continual touch points with. We want to kind of always work with them, if it's on like a gifting, kind of keeping them inclusive and also stemming them to kind of engage with their audience again, time after time. It may sometimes be for a paid partnership, but also as a genuine, like we want to say thank you to someone, or just to be involved in the brand. We find actually a lot of our sales do come through working through influencers, through repeat engaging with the audiences, whether it's just actually just putting a post up to say, FitFlop, I've got a sale on, I've checked out these products, swipe up. They actually really like the products, rather than just doing the hashtag ad or the hashtag paid placements. It's almost about that re-educating of their audience and retraining them and saying that this brand is a part of my life and this is what I want you to be involved in. So when we have that repetition and that continual engagement, that's when we see. So rather than just doing a one-time placement with a talent maker for a one-off campaign, we would always look to have a continual relationship with them. And I think that's where we see the halo effect in terms of sales. Again, it's not something we continually focus in on, but it's obviously important for any business to discuss about sales and the uplift. And when we do see that, we really credit the influencers, and we really thank them for that, because we ultimately know it's not an easy job. It's all your time. It's making sure that your content is right. It's content that's correct, right for your audiences. And I think that's the best way to kind of touch upon it, really. I think there's so many aspects I could kind of go into, but I think when we look at it, those would be my key ones that I would say: continual repetition, and not just being that one-off brand that is for one campaign, like a one-trick pony. It's all about consistency and building those relationships. All
right, I'm going to try to go one level deeper on this subject, and I'm a B2B marketer, not a B2C marketer. But I think we all have something in common, that we're about to enter the 2022 budget planning process. and so, as a marketer, I've got a pie of money, and I got to divide it up among different types of campaigns, channels, goals, and so on. What would you recommend to a brand, kind of about the percentage of overall spend that you might allocate to influencer marketing? And even if you don't want to give a specific amount, sort of like a way to think about that. Hollie, if you don't mind me asking you first.
No problem. It's actually something that I'm currently in the process of doing. Funnily, it has been a bit of a task for me today. I think it's a hard one. I would say it's a very important channel, and it's very much a very core part of our business objective. So I think we would we allocate probably between 15 to 20% of budget to influencers, but alongside that we do have a separate allocation for continual gifting, which we perceive as like just additional PR and continual outreach. I think, to caveat to that point, some months when we have higher moments, we do pulse in for brand activation and key brand moments. We'll increase the budget to support that, to elevate that. It's not always a linear approach, because sometimes we don't have story to also say that we may not have a new product, we may not have a new line that we want to kind of really hone in on. But at other moments when we could be launching a new product, we could say invest in 40%, up to 40% on that month for influencer marketing and brand awareness. So I think, yeah, to probably put it straight, probably about 20%. But I guess it varies from brand and also by market. I think it's not something that's just a easy kind of number when you look at it in terms of how much your awareness is in per market. Like, say, our biggest markets are between the UK and the US, whilst say the EU and the Canadian markets for us are a lot smaller, so we would look to invest slightly less, but it's nonetheless important. It's just how we balance it as a commercial for us.
Wow, how far this channel has come, really. For creators, that's got to get you excited, and brands, if you're not yet thinking about it, maybe it's about time. Scott, do you have a perspective on that question?
Yeah, I would say, just to give a little context for you in the audience, typically digital marketing budget, which is where I would see this variation of influencer falling, where it's more the measurable versus the brand, where you're trying to drive that conversion. Historically, digital marketing budgets range from about 10 to 14% of net sales. So within that, we would typically carve off about 15% of that budget for affiliate. And that's where we're shifting some of our dollars, because, you know, like a lot of brands trying to ease out of the promotions that we saw over the last year and a half, push full price. So that's where we'll leverage and run more paid placements with shop style and reward style to capture some of that influencer marketing versus your typical Ebates or kind of coupon typed affiliate programs. The second shift, historically, we would allocate about 20-25% to paid social. And I think that's where you'll see the bigger piece of the pie shift to influencer marketing for a couple reasons. One, paid social cost of media has skyrocketed over the last 2 years. So gone are the days where if you're a DTC brand 5 years ago, you had access to really, really cheap media that you could target really, really precisely. Now that's gone away. The second piece, back to the targeting with iOS 14, privacy, cookies, you can no longer rely on that side of it. So in my mind, the best way to kind of get the targeting, everything we've talked about in this conversation, is through influencers, where you can have a little more control. You can leverage your own first party data, which is data your brand owns. So I see us shifting out of that pie of 30%, pushing more of that to almost as high as 20% into some of these influencer, whether paid directly with creators or through some of the platforms that are out there.
Thanks, Scott. Stephanie, I know as on the agency side, you may say, I'd love it if 100% of budget was allocated this way, but I'm kidding. What's your perspective on this question?
I was actually just going to pass on this, because on the agency side, we really don't have a say in that. But I will tell you that what I'm seeing on the agency side via what is coming into us as agencies, budgets coming from everywhere. So influencer is a piece in some of the bigger brands that I've worked with that will not be named for confidentiality reasons, but because this is financials we're talking about here. But what I've seen from bigger brands is that I will have 5 or 6 different people from one company come at me with budget for influencer activation as part of it. And they could be in 5 different parts of the company. It's not like what Hollie said, it's not like one budget for influencer and this is what you do and these are the programs that you run. It's like this person as an influencer integrated into whatever it is that they're doing in their promotional strategies. So I've seen that across a lot of brands, and preferably I like it because I think that that's where you find the most value and the better ROIs, because you could see how it will directly support different program strategies.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, last question. The pandemic has undeniably, changed the marketing industry. How have influencer brand campaigns shifted, and what trends do you all anticipate for 2022?
And if I could add on to that, I'll just say thank you very much for being part of this. We're moving on to our next session in a couple of minutes, so we'll do this one rapid fire, and thanks in advance.
Okay, Hollie, want to take it away?
I must say, I think I have become a lover of TikTok this pandemic. I think the shift from just brands utilizing Instagram and just YouTube is going to develop so much more into TikToks a lot more, and how we would utilize that a lot further. I think it's something as a brand, my side, we're very excited by, and also how maybe older audiences are engaging with TikTok as well. It's not just your millennials for like 16 to 18-year-olds. When I think of TikTok, I think of potentially when it first came out, I remember it as being Vine or kind of along those lines. And now I think it's developed so much more into more of an adult and a mature audience. That's where it's really going to, and how brands can enhance their activity through that too, not just having a photo, but a real engaging video content that stimulates audiences a lot more. I think they're going to boom, and also the use of Instagram Reels as well. They're becoming a lot more popular, and how we would also again utilize video content over just static.
Yeah, and Scott, you're nodding. You want to chime in on the trends that you're foreseeing?
Yeah, I think 2. One, I think you saw kicked off with Instagram. I think you'll see a lot of the platforms really focus and try to take a white glove approach to influencers that they haven't done in the past. On the brand side, I think you'll finally see distributed e-commerce become a reality as brands look to push closer commerce into these channels.
Yeah, great. Now, Stephanie?
I'm just going to echo Hollie, but I'm going to take it in a different direction. I don't think I've worked on a campaign that's not been TikTok, but that's just me. And that's just one piece of the business that I happen to be working on. But I do want to just kind of point out from a talent perspective, because I know that we are both talent and brands here, is that, there's going to be a new platform that's popping up every day. And I think one of the trends we're going to see going forward is that influencers are losing their capacity to be on every platform. And so it becomes more strategic from the influencer perspective over what platform do you dedicate your time to, and how do you tackle the new trends? Do you get on TikTok just because it's popular and marketing dollars are going on there? Because it's not to say that marketing dollars are not going to Instagram or going to Instagram less. It's really just a new opportunity. And I think we're going to see it be pushed to the point of overwhelm for influencers, and there'll be this really big conversation about where should I be? How should I play? How can I best monetize? And really kind of see a redistribution of where people are living, where people are playing. And I think it'll be really interesting because we're not going to know what that looks like until it happens.
Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to speak with us. And I thoroughly enjoyed this session. I hope everyone else did as well.
That was great.
Thanks, Hollie. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.